digest, if you can even use those words, is the fact that throughout the course of the last several days, you see that there are small heroes everywhere, and they're not just from New York. They're from Philadelphia, and they're from Boston, and they're from far places like Missouri. And as you mentioned, right outside here at the Jacob Javits Center, which has been turned into essentially the ground at which some of these people are deployed. They are been waiting here in the rain, as you can see, some of them waiting as early as 3:30 this morning. They're construction workers, and they're electricians, and they are metal and steel workers. A lot of these people needed to essentially shore up some of the very insecure ground near Ground Zero, and to construct and to get some of the electrical equipment working, and to get the electricity working, which in much of Lower Manhattan is not working at this point. Paula?
All right, Michael. What can you tell us about what you've heard from paramedics this morning, and the impact this storm overnight had and what they're able to do?
I haven't heard anything about, I haven't spoken directly to any paramedics, but what I can tell you is that some of the rescue workers say that the rain, while it is cooling down some of the smoke there and spreading the smoke and clearing off some of the dust, makes a lot of the equipment a lot heavier. Some of the guys that we spoke to this morning say they don't care whether it's raining, they don't care whether they're in the sunshine, they just want to help people. There's still some hope among many of the people here that there are people alive, and they're willing to work as long as it takes to find and save those lives. Paula?
Michael Aku, thank you very much for that report. We'll come back to you throughout the morning for an update. Welcome to a brand new hour of our coverage. At this hour in New York City, the rescue efforts continue after being suspended last night for a short period of time. As you see, there's a cloud shrouding the city right now. Last night it was thunderstorms rumbling through here. There was a great fear that the high cranes that are being used in the cleanup effort would serve as lightning rods, so the rescue efforts were suspended. They're back underway now. The rain causing some big problems here. It obviously is helping to keep down the dust, but at the same time, as we mentioned a little earlier on, and Michael just mentioned, is making the ash and debris very slippery and very heavy for the paramedics and the rescue workers that are on the scene right now. Once again, you're looking at pictures of actually what happened in the wee hours of the morning. We should mention that the many thousands of Metro workers have been buttressed by dozens of special search and rescue teams that have been flown in from all over the country. Many of those provided through FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And that is where it stands at this hour. Good morning, everybody. I'm Paula Zahn, joining you from New York City this morning. The city is also getting ready for a visit by President Bush later today. He is expected to arrive here after he appears at the National Prayer Service at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. The president has asked for us all to honor those that have been injured, those that have been maimed, those that have been killed today at noon. This service will take place at 11:45 in Washington. We will be covering it live at noon throughout the country. You're going to hear a pealing of church bells from coast to coast. The president has asked companies to allow workers to go to their individual places of worship, whether mosques, whether synagogues, whether churches, to honor those that whose lives have been drastically changed by these multiple attacks, and those, of course, who have lost their lives. The mayor of New York City now saying at least 4,700 people are missing at this hour. The known death toll nearing the 100 mark. Among those, some 300 or so firefighters and many police officers. Right now, we're going to go down to the Armory, which is where a lot of heartache is being experienced at the moment. That's where we find Hillary Lane, one of our CNN correspondents. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there right now. Hi, Hillary.
Oh, hi, Paula. While the rain may be making things so much more difficult downtown, it's not hampering the efforts of the people who are coming here, desperate to find any information they can on the people whom they loved so much. I'm standing outside of the Missing Persons Bureau. It is a giant armory that has been converted for that purpose. And this morning it opens up about 8 o'clock. there is already a short line of people who either were not able to make it in yesterday or who have come back with more information. One of the men I spoke with, the second in line this morning, says he was here on Wednesday when this Missing Persons Bureau opened for the first time. He's come back. He has brought with him dental records and a hairbrush, and obviously those are items that could be used for DNA identification purposes. The city of New York gearing up to do thousands upon thousands of DNA tests. Told me a little bit about what happens inside the armory after the people who come here to file missing persons reports fill those papers out, 8 pages in total. They're then each matched with a police detective, and they give all sorts of information. They're asked for names of dentists, again, for DNA identification purposes, if that becomes necessary, as well as a variety of other personal questions. I have here with me Stanford Chan, who was in the armory yesterday and could tell us a little bit about what happened inside when he filed that report. Tell us a little bit about what the detectives were asking you for in terms of personal identification information.
Basically anything that has to do with them physically, and particularly that day, what they were wearing. If you have any information regarding dental records, like you said, that's important to bring with you. Any identification marks on the body, whether it's earrings or anything. They're pretty detailed in terms of what they're asking. So. Yeah.
Okay, Stan, you have brought a picture with you. You are looking for one of your best friends. Just tell us a little bit about him. I know his wife was not able to make it in, which is why you're here today.
Yeah, his wife Stacy is home right now. She's 9 months pregnant, and she's doing all she can basically from the Jersey side and the police department there, which has been also cross-referencing with the police department here in terms of any information. Craig and I went to junior high school and high school together, and I'm doing all I can basically here in the city for them and for myself. So.
Okay, and I see he was on the 88th floor, and you haven't heard anything from him. When was the last time you spoke with him, or his wife spoke with him?
He actually left a message saying that he was okay when the plane first hit. But since then, we haven't heard anything from that.
Okay, and we saw you this morning wandering around the streets. You'd already been inside the armory, and now you were making your way to hospital, something you've already done. Yeah. How does it feel now on the fourth day after, and at what point are you just saying, you know, this doesn't look good?
It's getting a little overwhelming. You know, I couldn't sleep, and I'm trying to do all I can and putting the picture up in the hospital right now. But there are so many pictures, and there's just so many people that are still missing. And this rain is just not helping the recovery process. It's making it also very dangerous for those that are already down there. We have a mutual friend that's in the NYPD, and he's been at Ground Zero for the last couple of days. And I've been talking to him as well, and it's a horrific experience down there as well. And this only makes it worse, basically.
Well, Stan, thank you. It's a wonderful thing you're doing to get out and put the posters up and keep pressing on.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
And Paula, let me just tell you one other thing. I was out here a good part of the day yesterday, and people were coming up to us with posters. Anybody who would listen, anybody who would look, putting the posters in our face, just talking about these people, trying to get the pictures out. And it was really turning to desperation as people are beginning to realize that so many days have passed and the chances are so slim. Back to you.
I tell you, Hillary, you watch some of those conversations you've had, and we had a guest here earlier this morning, and you hear what they had to say, and you don't even know how they can stand up today. What they're having to endure is just absolutely unthinkable. We're going to show you a picture right now of St. Paul's Cathedral in London, where Prime Minister Tony Blair is meeting a number of parishioners who have just left a prayer service there in honor of the innocent Americans slaughtered here in the multiple terrorist attacks. I'm told the Prime Minister did speak at the service. This isn't the only service going on in Europe. There have been prayer services of this kind throughout that continent. Even in Albania and Croatia, there were special services earlier today, and in fact at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, there were many countries honoring the dead and the injured, and those of us that are still standing with 3 minutes of silence. Kind of an unusual scene for the Prime Minister to be greeting Londoners in this fashion, given the heightened state of alert throughout the world right now. An American flag, from what I can tell, hanging from an adjoining building or a building nearby the cathedral. A very touching scene, the Prime Minister seemingly conversing quite openly with Londoners. And as we leave that scene, I wanted to bring you up to date on some of the latest developments back here in America. You might have heard that searchers have found both recorders this morning from the jet, that crashed into the Pentagon on Tuesday. FBI agents took custody of the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder from American Airlines Flight 77. Coast Guardsmen boarded a Carnival Cruise Line ship this morning off the coast of Miami and took 2 people into custody. Authorities claim the 2 have a history of hijacking, but it is unclear if they could be directly connected with Tuesday's attacks. Congress and the White House have agreed on a $40 billion appropriation to help with the cleanup and recovery in New York and Arlington, Virginia. That is twice what the president had asked for. Formal votes are expected today in both houses. In New York, the search for an estimated 4,700 missing people in the ruins of the World Trade Center was interrupted overnight by heavy rain. We know at this hour that 184 sets of human remains have been recovered so far. More than 4,000 people have been treated at New York hospitals since Tuesday's attacks. Unfortunately, there are still hundreds and hundreds of families who have no idea where these injured are. And you hear these horrendous stories of families going from hospital to hospital to try to track down those that have survived. A quick reminder that a national prayer service will be held at the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. later today. Our live coverage of that event will pick up at 11:45. Among those expected to attend, President Bush, our current president, his father, the former president, President Clinton, President Carter, President Ford, former Vice President Al Gore, as well as many, many members of Congress. Right now, we're going to check in with Major Garrett, who joins us from the White House with some more details on what we can expect there later today. Garrett, what can you tell us?
Good morning,
Major
Paula.
Garrett. Sorry about that. We've all been operating on limited hours of sleep here. So
There's no
sorry.
doubt. There's
Good
no
morning,
doubt.
Major.
Good morning, Paula. A very tall order for the president this morning at the National Cathedral, trying to speak to a nation racked with grief, but in the secular language of politics, not the religious language that so many other speakers will invoke. Billy Graham, often thought of as not only the pastor to America's presidents, but a pastor to the entire Protestant country. There will be other members of other religious affiliations at the National Cathedral, as you mentioned, former President Clinton, former Vice President Al Gore, Presidents Carter, Presidents Ford. Paula, we do not have an official White House confirmation that President George Herbert Walker Bush will be there. When we get that, we'll make sure and bring that to you. We're also expected to see in the audience at the National Cathedral former high-ranking officials from Democratic and Republican administrations of yore as a sign of solidarity. And the president will try to talk to the nation about why this happened, what we can draw from this as a country, how to look to the future, not only in a spiritual sense, but also in a secular sense of how this political environment can be improved, how the political unity now so prevalent here in Washington and across the country can manifest itself and be used against those who have perpetrated terror against the United States. All of those things on the president's agenda in his remarks at the National Cathedral. One person who is not expected to be at that prayer service and that service of remembrance, Vice President Dick Cheney. His absence indicative of the very high state of security around the White House. Vice President Cheney yesterday was sent to Camp David, the presidential retreat. Why? So the Vice President and the President of the United States would not be in the same location at the same time. We have some pictures I want to show you this morning, Paula, of the very high state of security around the White House. This morning, as I came into the White House grounds, I was met by police cars, camouflage Humvee military vehicles several blocks away from Washington, police officers, Secret Service agents, federal marshals checking IDs, not only mine, but everyone else who tried to come toward the White House grounds. This perimeter much wider, much more extensive than I've ever seen around the White House in my time covering the White House. Clearly an indication that the Secret Service believes that this White House compound, the people who work in it, the media, the president, and the extensive White House staff family need extra protection, and many, many more precautions are being taken to afford them exactly that kind of protection. After the National day of remembrance and prayer at the National Cathedral. President Bush will then fly to New York City to get a first-hand look at the damage, the extensive, horrific damage in Lower Manhattan. He will talk with the governor of New York, George Pataki, a Republican, and the mayor,